In 1960, Hurricane Donna caused massive damage to Southwest Florida with destructive winds and immense flooding. The devastation from that storm ultimately led to the creation of the Southwest Florida Water Management District a year later. In honor of America's 250th birthday, we're going to look back on the district's own 65-year journey to its current mission to protect water resources, minimize flood risks, and ensure the public's water needs are met. So travel back in time with us because this is the Water Matters Podcast.
You're watching the Water Matters Podcast, brought to you by the Southwest Florida Water Management District. We answer your most popular questions about the work we do and the services we offer, including new projects, springs protection, water conservation efforts, and more. Learn about the many ways we serve the community and protect your water resources.
Welcome to this episode of the Water Matters Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Sager, and today we're talking about history. America is celebrating the 250th anniversary of its founding, and we thought it would be a great time to talk about the district's history. I'm joined today by Michelle Weaver, Director of the Employee Outreach and General Services Division here at the district. Welcome, Michelle.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
It's so great to have you here today with us. You're a longtime employee here at the district, and so we're going to just kind of talk about some of the history now. You haven't seen all the history, but you've seen a fair share because you've been here more than 30 years, correct?
That's correct.
And you've held a wide range of positions. Can you talk a little bit about your personal history here at the district?
So I had the wonderful privilege of starting here as a high school student intern. Hernando High School had a program with the district where you could come and intern half a day your senior year. So I did that for my entire senior year, and I was hired on immediately after that in the regulation division. And I worked in the regulation division for 27 years, which was a wonderful exposure to the district and all of the functions that are performed. I also took advantage of the district's tuition reimbursement program to get my civil engineering degree and my master's in business administration. And so taking advantage of that also opened up other opportunities for me. So I went from the regulation division as a bureau chief into the general services bureau as a bureau chief, and ultimately as the division director for employee outreach and general services.
Wow, so you have a really ranging career and have seen quite a bit, I'm sure, through that 30 years. So let's kind of dive into the district's history. You know, I mentioned at the top that Hurricane Donna in 1960 was what led to our creation, and not just our creation, but the creation of, ultimately in the end, the 5 water management districts eventually. Why was that such a pivotal moment for the state to move forward with this kind of water district system?
As you mentioned, Hurricane Donna was really the fundamental thing that started our district. And there were other hurricanes that started a conservation district in South Florida, which ultimately became the South Florida Water Management District. In 1972, all 5 water management districts were established. And so our immediate response was to the flooding issues that were created from Hurricane Donna on top of already saturated conditions. That led the Army Corps of Engineers to develop the Four River Basins project. They needed a local sponsor. So in 1961, our district was established.
Can you talk a little bit more about that project and what it entailed? Because people probably don't understand necessarily.
So the Four Rivers Basin project, it was just that. It was taking a look at 4 river basins that originate from the Green Swamp. And the 4 rivers in the Four River Basins project included the Ocklawaha, the Withlacoochee, the Hillsborough, and the Peace Rivers. And looking at ways to manage how water flows through those systems to alleviate flooding in some of the areas. On top of those 4 river basins, they also looked at the Lake Tarpon Outfall Project and the Tampa Bypass Canal.
Along with those flood control efforts, the Tampa Bypass Canal was constructed in 1966, and that is still something that has an impact on us today. We saw that as recently as Hurricane Milton. Can you talk a little bit about that project and its significance for the Tampa Bay area?
Yes, certainly. The bypass canal in its idea was to divert flood waters around the cities of Temple Terrace and Tampa. The Hillsborough River flows right through both of those cities, and it was a way to shunt the flows into the lower Hillsborough flood detention area or into the bypass canal once that reaches capacity. And when you look forward to today, That's really become not only a source of routing water, but it's also now water supply and helps to preserve the minimum flow of the Hillsborough River.
And when you talk about water supply and minimum flow, can you explain how it does that as well?
So water is taken from the middle pool of the bypass canal and put through the Harney Canal, and the Harney Canal connects to the Hillsborough River above the dam where the city of Tampa stores water for their drinking water supply.
So it really plays an important role then for the community, and we're pretty glad that they built that so long ago, and it's still providing us so many benefits today.
Yes.
So let's jump to the 1970s and talk about the Green Swamp, which you had mentioned earlier. This was Florida's first area of critical concern. Can you talk about why this piece of property is so vital for our area?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, that is the headwaters for those four rivers that the Army Corps was doing projects for. And because there's not a lot of development in that region, the waters coming out of the Green Swamp are very high water quality. They also create some head pressure to keep systems moving, and it has the ability to store a lot of water. And so, originally, part of the Four River Basins project was to create a impoundment system in that region, and ultimately the district was able to work with our federal partners to change that to simply be a natural system. And so it is looked to for the vitality of our region, especially those water systems with Lacucci, Hillsborough River, Peace River, which feed so many of our citizens.
All major rivers through various communities. It's amazing that one spot kind of in the center can have such a far reach because, throughout the Tampa Bay area, northern area, all throughout from this one, pretty large area,
Yeah.
but still.
Well, I mean, think about it. Those two of them wind up in our estuaries that we are so well invested into, and then the other winding up in the north end of our district.
So interesting. So now let's fast forward to the 1980s. And this is the decade where we saw the creation of the Surface Water Improvement Management Act, which we call SWIM here at the district. And we have a pretty prominent SWIM program here. Talk to us a little bit about that program and all the great things that they do.
So the wonderful part about the SWIM program is that it identifies water bodies of critical concern for our district where water quality is of essence. Our district has a very proactive program with SWIM where we go out, take a look at the quality of the water in those systems, and identify projects that could be done to continue improving water quality. When you take the SWIM program and you marry it with our regulatory program where water quality is an aspect of environmental resource permitting, it's a wonderful combination to help improve the water quality of our region.
Yeah, it's such an important program, and they've done so many great projects throughout the years. So as we move into the 90s, we see the end of what's known as the water wars. Can you kind of explain what that was and how it led to the creation of what we now know as Tampa Bay Water?
Sure. So the water wars started way before the 90s. We were established in 1961, but in 1968, we were given regulatory authority over water resource planning and water supplies. Well fields specifically were in our regulatory purview, and it was something that we were taking a look at. We started noticing some environmental degradation that was happening around wellheads. Well, we learned the wellheads were owned by Pinellas County or the city of St. Pete because their wells that were put in the 1920s were starting to go saline. They started moving forward as early as the 30s and 40s. And so there were beginning to be competing demands for that water. And with that, we approached these entities and started looking at solutions. They all wanted the same pot of water, but obviously you can't sustain growth that way. And so with that, we worked with the entities to establish what was known as the West Coast Regional Water Supply Authority, which was great. It gave us our first regional approach at looking how to manage those demands. Well, following growth after that and following drought, it really started to crop up again in the 90s that it just wasn't enough. And we needed to start considering alternative water supplies. Us working with those utilities, with those entities that supply water, we're able to develop not only Tampa Bay Water, which was a shift from the West Coast Regional Water Supply Authority, to also committing funds for the first establishment of regional water supplies.
So to kind of put this in the simpler terms, if I'm understanding this correctly, essentially you had these different utilities all vying for water because their areas were growing. And we helped bring them together to kind of be part of a cooperative and a brand new kind of regional utility that serves everyone.
That's correct. And also with the commitment of funds to help them identify
And
alternative
that's
water
important.
supplies.
That's an important factor because you
Yes.
can have all the plans, but if you don't have the funds to help with the water supply, then and obviously we have seen that was crucial because we've continued to see tremendous growth, and it's so great that we have that in place now. That kind of leads us into the 2000s, and we're now starting to see more investment into alternative water supplies. The Tampa Bay desalination plant goes online.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that project and what that meant for the area.
So part of the commitment to alternative water supplies is considering all of the options. At that time, desalination was something that happened elsewhere. Taking a look at our region and trying to find, one, a good location to put it, but also how much can it be viable for our region. But really what desalination did for our region was help give us another option. We didn't have to keep relying on groundwater. We didn't have to keep relying on surface water, but also desalination as another opportunity so that we have the ability to rotate that demand. When it's drought, you're reliant on groundwater. When it's rainy, you're reliant on surface water. This gives us the ability to be flexible in both of those situations.
It's a great way of putting it. And when you're speaking of talking about options, we continue to see that as we move forward. Because again, the focus on alternative water supplies continues to grow. We see the creation of the Polk Regional Water Cooperative. We're seeing more investment in potable reuse and kind of test projects popping up. Why are all of these kind of looks and projects at alternative water supplies so important, especially moving forward?
When we were established as a district, our whole district was in the few million residents, and we are approaching even greater growth than that. And we develop regional water supply plans, two of them, one for the district as a whole and one for the Central Florida Water Initiative area. Both of those take a look at all the competing demands for water. That's not just potable use, but that's also our agriculture use, our energy use for those industries that are so popular in our state. And we know with certainty that groundwater is not going to be the final solution.
So let's talk about the future. Can you talk a little bit about what the district has in place, what kind of plans, what kind of funding for the future in future water supplies?
Sure, Michelle. The governing board has had a lot of foresight when it comes to water supply planning. And we as a district have committed over $600 million to alternative water supply projects. And those are all funded in support of our regional water supply entities, the Peace River, Minnesota Regional Water Supply Authority, the Polk Regional Water Cooperative, and Tampa Bay Water.
So it sounds like we have a strong plan and we're looking forward.
Yes, and we will continue with our commitment to alternative water supplies.
Well, we've learned a lot of history today and a little bit about our future. Thank you so much for joining us. There was so much great information, and we didn't even get to all the projects and initiatives that we do here at the district. So we really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
If you want to learn more, visit watermatters.org/250 to check out our interactive timeline. You can also visit America250fl.com to discover other ways Florida is celebrating America's 250th birthday. Thank you for joining us. This is the Water Matters Podcast.